Why does God let the devil loose after 1,000 years of paradise? It's the strangest line in Revelation. A perfect world, a restrained adversary, and then the chains come off. There has to be a reason, and once you see it, the whole story of what humans are for makes a different kind of sense. Last week we left Adam in the dust, a body and breath that was itself a soul. We said the becoming wasn't innate, we said it was given. This week we follow what was given, to the place where it had to be given again. Through this lens, 1 Corinthians 15:45. Paul writes to a Greek-speaking church in Corinth, and when he wants to talk about Adam, he reaches for the Septuagint, the Greek Old Testament those readers had on the shelf. Genesis 2:7 in Greek says the man became psychē zōsan, a living being. 2 words. Paul lifts those exact 2 words and uses them in his letter. The first Adam became a living being, he writes. And then he goes one step further. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. Same verb, same shape of phrase. He's drawing a parallel as carefully as a translator draws a line under matching text. 2 Adams, 2 becomings, different scopes. Last Adam is a strange phrase if you sit with it. Paul could have said, Christ, the eternal Son. He could have said, the divine Word made flesh. He didn't. He said, the last Adam. Adam is a category, a kind of human. The first one carried that category alone. Paul is saying Christ steps into that same category, not a different species, not a hybrid. The second perfect human, doing what the first one couldn't. If you read Paul slowly, you can almost feel him guarding against the obvious mistake, the temptation to make Christ a category of his own. Adam's test was the easiest version of a test we're all still taking. He was perfect. He lived in literal paradise. He had a natural inclination to do the right thing. He had to fight against that disposition to disobey. He had one rule, and the consequences were spelled out in advance. And he failed anyway. Now think about your test. You're not perfect. You don't live in paradise. You have an inherited tendency to act selfishly that almost always pulls against love. The conditions could not be more different. And yet the question being asked of you is the same one being asked of him. Will you choose love? Will you choose obedience? Here's where it gets interesting. The picture most of us were taught is that humans are batteries. Each one is born with a charge. When the body dies, the charge persists somewhere. Heaven, hell, somewhere in between. But the energy itself is yours to keep, innate. The picture Genesis 2:7 actually paints is different. Humans are lamps, plugged in. The light isn't yours, it's flowing through you. Cut the cord and the light goes out. Not instantly. There's residual charge in the wire. Adam lived 930 years after he was unplugged. But the disconnection was real, and it propagated. Every human born after him is born unplugged. We come into the world with the wiring intact and the cord severed. Eternal life, in this picture, is the gift of being reconnected. It was never something you carried, it was something you received. That's what death is in this picture. Not a soul leaving the body, not a passage to somewhere else. Death is the moment the residual charge runs out. The lamp doesn't relocate. The lamp just stops shining. Which means the question isn't, where do you go when you die? The question is, how do you get plugged back in? The first Adam became a living being, Paul writes. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. Read it slowly. Not is, became. Not a status he carried, something he became. Christ in this picture is not a second battery. He's not another finite charge handed to humanity to hold. He is the bridge back to the source, the reconnection, the way the wiring gets restored. When Paul calls him life-giving spirit, he's not making Christ a category of his own. He's making Christ the channel. Through him, the gift Adam lost flows back. Not because Christ has eternal life as a personal possession to distribute, but because, through what he became, the source is reachable again. The first Adam unplugged us. The last Adam is how we plug back in. 2 becomings. The first Adam became a living being, a body and breath that ran on borrowed charge. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. the way the borrowing becomes giving. Same verb in both sentences. Paul uses it twice on purpose. He's drawing a line you're meant to follow. Adam is the question. Christ is the answer. Adam is the wound. Christ is the way the wound gets healed without erasing the human at the center of it. The trade Paul has in mind isn't a divine being swapped in for a human one. It's one perfect human for one perfect human. A ransom that only works if both ends of the trade are the same kind of thing. What the original audience would have understood. Here's the strange thing about Christianity in the modern picture. Believers are told they have an immortal soul, that the soul is theirs, that the soul will go somewhere when they die. But none of that was the gospel a first-century Jew would have heard. They didn't hear, "You have an indestructible part of you." They heard, "You can be plugged back in, through Christ, through love, through trust." The test that's still in front of every one of us isn't easier than Adam's. It's harder. We're not in paradise. We're not perfect. We have the disposition working against us, not for us. And yet the question on the table is exactly the one Adam was asked. Will you choose to live in the way you were made to live? Revelation tells us about a 1,000-year period when Christ rules. The devil is restrained throughout. Resurrected ones come back, alongside everyone living, and for 1,000 years the conditions are favorable. Christ's rulership is unopposed. Mankind has the chance to know God, to learn what it looks like to live in love. This is, for most of humanity, the first genuine test under fair conditions. If you died in famine, in war, in childhood, in ignorance of the gospel, you didn't have Adam's test. You had a fragment of it at best. The millennium is where the test becomes universal. Same prospect, same gift on offer, same choice to be made. And then, at the end of the 1,000 years, the chains come off the adversary. Not because God is cruel, because the test has to include the alternative. You can't choose paradise without seeing what the other path looks like. That's why the devil is loosed, so that everyone gets the same choice Adam was given. Now we have to talk about the harder thing. If the last Adam means a second perfect human, where does that leave the doctrine that Jesus is God? It's a fair question. It's the question that's been answered different ways for 2,000 years. And we want to be careful here, because most of Christian tradition reads it differently than what we just laid out. So let's take it seriously. The Trinitarian reading says Jesus is God in human form, that the divine Son took on flesh without ceasing to be divine. That's the dominant reading. It's the reading the Nicene Creed locks in, and it's not held by lazy people. But there's another reading, older than Nicaea, present in the New Testament itself, that takes Paul at his word when he says, "the last Adam." A reading where Jesus is the second perfect human, chosen by God, with no human father, but still in the human category. And it didn't survive the centuries by accident. Here's how it might have happened. First-century Jews were waiting for a Messiah. By definition, a Messiah was a special man, anointed, chosen by God, a deliverer. When Jesus arrived, he started ordinary, a carpenter. He had siblings, ordinary clothing, ordinary trade. When his ministry began, the miracles made it obvious he was no ordinary man, that he was, exactly as the messianic expectation said, a very special one, chosen, anointed, with no human father. When the apostles wrote about him a generation later, the language reached for everything available: light, glory, the Word, the image of God. And honestly, it would be more surprising if no reader took that language and made the leap to, this special man is God. That leap is human. It's how we elevate the people we love most. We've done it for kings, for celebrities, for teachers. The Bible writers were trying to impress one thing on their readers. This man was special, chosen by God, sent for a purpose only a human could fulfill. Some readers heard exactly that. Others took the leap. Both readings are still on the table. Thus, it is written, the first man, Adam, became a living being. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. 1 Corinthians 15:45. The same question Eden asked, the same gift on offer. Just 2,000 years later, in different clothes. This is the line in Revelation. When the 1,000 years are ended, Satan will be released from his prison and will come out to deceive the nations. It's startling on first read. 1,000 years of paradise, and then the adversary is set loose. Why? The Bible lens view, and it's a minority one, is that the test has to include the alternative. Adam was tested with the alternative present. Every fair test, by definition, includes the option to refuse. The millennium gives every human the chance to know God under good conditions. The release of the adversary at the end is the chance to say, having seen God's reign, I still want a different way to live. Some will say that. Most, the text suggests, will not. And that's where the final judgment lands. Two destinies, eternal life, the gift, finally received, finally permanent, or eternal death, the lamp that chose to stay unplugged. No more test, no more sorrows, no more death. Just two ways of being human, made permanent by the choice that was finally, fully free. Through this lens, eternal life isn't a status you have. It's a gift you receive when you choose love. It always was. Adam was given the chance, in the easiest version of the test, and he didn't take it. The last Adam was given the chance, in the hardest version of the test, and he did. And the way is open now for the rest of us, in our version of the test, to do the same. Not because we have something inside us that can't die, but because the source is reachable, and the cord can be reconnected, and the lamp was always meant to shine. Ancient wisdom, modern clarity. The question Eden asked is the question still in front of you. And one day, in 1,000 years, or in this very afternoon, you'll get to answer. Next week, what the original audience knew about the serpent that we forgot. The voice in the garden didn't come from nowhere, and the pedigree of the lie tells you exactly where the modern picture came from.